The chains of daily routine are so light they are hardly felt, until one day they are so heavy they can no longer be broken. Warren Buffett. Time is the most democratic resource of all, and yet the most wasted. It doesn't matter if you're a multimillionaire entrepreneur, a college student, a parent, or a freelancer. Each of us receives exactly 24 hours a day. Not a minute more, not a second less. The difference isn't in the quantity, but in the quality with which we use it. That quality is what defines the distance between someone who achieves tenfold growth and someone who reaches the end of their life wondering what would have happened if they had made better use of their hours. The invisible cost of wasting time isn't measured in clocks or calendars. It's measured in opportunities that never return. Think of someone who checks their phone every 10 minutes for irrelevant notifications. They may think they only lost a few seconds, but by the end of the day, they'll have wasted hours they'll never get back. Even worse, their concentration will have been fragmented, and what could have been completed in an hour stretches into 3 or 4. That's the hidden cost. It's not just the lost time, but the cumulative impact that crushes productivity, saps energy, and dilutes dreams. Examples of this invisible cost abound. A student who decides to take a break by watching TV shows before studying for an exam can lose the mental freshness of a time when they were most motivated. An entrepreneur who postpones an important call to check social media may not notice the immediate damage, but in the long term, these decisions add up to delays that can mean lost business. And the most painful thing is that we often don't feel the impact immediately. We discover it years later, when we realize we missed out on opportunities that will never return. The fascinating thing is that the most successful people on the planet don't have more hours than we do. Elon Musk, Oprah Winfrey, Malala Yousafzai, or Lionel Messi all have the same 24-hour time frame. What changes is how they choose to spend those hours. Some decide to invest them in deep work, their health, constant learning, and cultivating powerful relationships. Others, however, dilute them with seemingly innocent distractions. An endless conversation that leads nowhere, a pointless fight on social media, auto-scrolling through videos that provide nothing more than momentary pleasure. Imagine for a moment that every day you wake up to a bank account that gives you 86,400 gold coins, one for every second. The rule is that you must spend them all, and what you don't use is lost forever. How would you invest them? Would you spend them on worthless things, or put them into stocks that multiply their value in the future? That's exactly what happens with time. Every day you receive 86,400 seconds, and every one you waste on trivialities is like throwing gold coins out the window. It doesn't come back, it doesn't accumulate, you can't borrow it tomorrow. This is where habits come in. Because it's not a single decision, but the daily repetition of small choices. A habit is like a brick. On its own, it may seem insignificant, but over months and years, those bricks form a castle or a wall that encloses you. Those who spend their days on habits that detract build a wall of regret. Those who invest their days in habits that multiply build a fortress of opportunity. Habits have exponential power. Consider the story of someone who decides to read just 20 pages a day. At first, it seems like a minimal amount, something almost irrelevant. But after a year, they'll have read more than 30 complete books. In a decade, that person will not only have acquired knowledge that transforms their way of thinking, but will likely have radically changed their position in life. The same is true for health. Someone who decides to walk for half an hour every day may not notice immediate results in the first week, but after a year, they will have strengthened their heart, reduced their risk of disease, and improved their daily energy. On the contrary, negative habits also multiply. 1 hour a day lost on social media is equivalent to more than 15 full days over the course of a year. A small daily procrastination can represent years of unfinished projects. That's why those who understand the power of habits focus not only on the present, but also on the future. They know that every choice is a seed that will germinate, for better or worse. The great figures of history knew this well. Benjamin Franklin, for example, designed a system of habits that he rigorously followed every day, because he understood that daily discipline was the path to greatness. APJ Abdul Kalam, former president of India, spent his time learning, teaching, and working diligently, even when others were asleep. Dhirubhai Ambani, one of Asia's most influential businessmen, transformed every free minute into an opportunity to think strategically, observe the market, and create connections. None of them had more hours than you. They simply decided that each one should serve a purpose. Time doesn't give warnings. It doesn't send reminders, nor does it return what was lost. But it does leave traces. Your results, your achievements, your energy level, and your life satisfaction are, ultimately, a reflection of how you've spent your time. Therefore, reflecting on the invisible cost of wasting time, recognizing that we all have the same 24 hours, and embracing the power of habits isn't a theoretical exercise. It's a vital urgency. But before continuing, please share your audiobook in the comments below. If this message resonates with you, please give it a thumbs up and share it. This way, you'll be sure not to miss out on any content that nourishes your mind and brings you closer every day to the life you truly deserve. There's no time to waste. Let's continue now. Chapter 1. Habit number 1. Master your agenda before others master it. If you don't plan your day, someone else will. Jim Rohn. Time is like a river. It flows without stopping, waiting for no one. The only thing we can decide is whether we navigate it with direction or let ourselves be carried along by the current. Mastering your schedule is, in essence, deciding where you're going each day, rather than allowing chance, the demands of others, or digital distractions to set the course for you. This isn't just a productivity skill. It's a life habit. People who become masters of their schedules often achieve results that seem impossible to those who simply react to what happens. Imagine a surgeon before entering a complex operation. He doesn't improvise. Every instrument is in place, every movement is planned, every assistant knows what to do. Now imagine the same surgeon entering the operating room unprepared, without a plan. The result would be disastrous. The curious thing is that many live their days like that disorganized surgeon, improvising, reacting to emergencies, without a clear plan. Life, like an operation, requires precision. And that precision begins with planning. The golden rule of daily planning is simple. If it's not in your calendar, it doesn't exist. Many people have vague dreams, projects in mind, noble intentions, but they never translate them into scheduled actions. They say, I want to read more, I want to exercise, I want to start a business, but they leave it to chance when they have free time. And free time, in a world full of distractions, rarely appears. Instead, those who master their schedules block out specific slots, 30 minutes for reading, 1 hour for exercising, 2 hours for uninterrupted deep work. They don't wait for time to free up, they free it consciously. A clear example is Benjamin Franklin, who designed a detailed schedule for each day, from study time to rest time. He didn't do this because he loved rigidity, but because he understood that without structure, time dissolves. Another more modern example is Elon Musk, who organizes his days into 5-minute blocks. It may seem extreme, but it demonstrates a principle. When you allocate time to specific tasks, you reduce mental friction and increase your ability to produce extraordinary results. Mastering your schedule doesn't mean filling it to the brim with activities. Many people make a mistake here. They believe that productivity is synonymous with being busy all day. The opposite is true. Being busy doesn't always mean making progress. It's often a disguised way of wasting time. The goal isn't to overfill your schedule, but to prioritize what's essential. If your calendar is filled with irrelevant commitments, no matter how disciplined you are, you'll always feel like you're not making progress. True mastery of your schedule is measured by your ability to put what really matters first. Consider the story of an executive who spends 8 hours in meetings. At the end of the day, he feels exhausted, but he reviews his results and discovers he hasn't made any progress on projects that generate revenue or innovation. In contrast, another executive decides to block off 2 hours of his morning to work on his most important strategic project before checking emails or attending meetings. That decision alone makes a world of difference to his long-term results. It's not about working more, but about working on what multiplies. But even with planning, time thieves lurk. Your phone vibrates, someone asks for 5 minutes, that turns into an hour. A notification breaks your concentration in the middle of a deep task. Protecting your time from interruptions is an act of radical discipline. It's like a guard at the door of your mind. You must decide who to let in and who to keep out. Each interruption not only steals time, it also disrupts your mental rhythm and forces your brain to expend extra energy to regain focus. Studies show that after a digital interruption, such as checking a text message, it can take up to 20 minutes for your brain to regain its previous level of focus. That means if you check your phone every 10 minutes, you'll never reach the flow state necessary to produce your best work. It's like trying to run a marathon by stopping every 100 meters. In the end, no matter how fast you run, you'll never reach your full potential. Therefore, protecting your schedule involves establishing clear boundaries. Some achieve this by setting specific times to check emails and messages, rather than doing so continuously. Others create distraction-free environments, turning off notifications, putting their phones in another room, and using apps that block social media while they work. It's not about living in isolation, but rather recognizing that every distraction comes at a high cost and that your time deserves respect. An inspiring example is Cal Newport, author of Deep Work, who organizes his life around blocks of deep concentration. During those hours, the outside world doesn't exist. No calls, no social media, no emails. The result is that he produces high-level academic research and books that impact millions of people. Not because he has more hours than you, but because he protects the ones he has like diamonds. Mastering your schedule also means learning to say no. This is one of the most difficult habits because it involves making others uncomfortable. However, every yes you say to something irrelevant is a no to something that really matters. Many successful people are known for being selective with their commitments. Warren Buffett put it best, "The difference between successful people and very successful people is that very successful people say no almost all the time." Saying no isn't an act of arrogance, it's an act of wisdom. Saying no to what drains your energy makes room for what builds your future. If someone invites you to an unnecessary meeting, if a friend insists on distracting you when you have an urgent goal, if an app demands your attention with useless notifications, you have a responsibility to defend your schedule. Your time is a non-renewable resource. No one else will do it for you. It's worth remembering that your schedule is a reflection of your real priorities, not your intentions. You may say you value your health, but if your calendar doesn't have room for exercise or rest, the reality is different. You may say you want to start a business, but if your schedule is filled with entertainment instead of building blocks, what you value in practice is different. Your calendar speaks louder than your words. This habit, mastering your planner before others master it, is a declaration of autonomy. It's recognizing that each day is a blank canvas, and you decide what to draw on it. Some fill it with scribbles and smudges, the product of improvisation. Others turn it into a masterpiece, because each stroke responds to a clear intention. Life rewards the latter. There's no need to be extreme. It's not about scheduling every minute of your existence or eliminating all flexibility. The key is finding a balance, allocating time for what's important, firmly protecting those spaces, and leaving room for the spontaneity that nourishes life. The essential thing is that you are the one who decides, not circumstances, not the urgency of others, not the algorithms of a social network. At the end of the day, when you look at your calendar, you should be able to say, "Today I invested my hours in what truly matters." That phrase, repeated day after day, has transformative power, because the sum of well-managed days becomes a life well lived. And there is no greater success than that. Chapter 2. Habit number 2. Eliminate distractions and learn to say no. It's not hard work that kills, it's constant distractions. Robin Sharma. We live in the noisiest era in human history. Never before have we had so much information, so many screens, so many notifications screaming at us for attention every second. The funny thing is that we think we control that noise, when in reality, it controls us. The habit of eliminating distractions and learning to say no is perhaps one of the most difficult to develop in this hyper-connected world, but also one of the most liberating. Because every distraction you eliminate gives you back time, energy, and mental clarity, 3 priceless resources. The true price of multitasking is higher than we think. For years, we were led to believe that multitasking was a virtue, that we could answer emails, take calls, check social media, and work on a complex project at the same time. The reality is that the human brain isn't designed to operate that way. What we're actually doing isn't multitasking, but rather constantly shifting focus. Every time we jump from one activity to another, the brain pays a cognitive tax. It takes seconds or minutes to adapt, it loses focus, and it consumes more energy than necessary. Imagine a writer trying to write a chapter of their book while answering messages on their phone. They may think they're making progress on both, but they're actually sabotaging their own performance. Their writing loses flow, their ideas fragment, And at the end of the day, they discover they've worked for hours without producing anything solid. Multitasking is like trying to light 10 campfires at the same time with a single match. None of them ever catches properly. Neuroscience studies are clear. A distracted brain works up to 40% slower than a focused one. That is, what you could finish in 2 hours, while focus can take more than 3 or 4 if you do it while checking notifications. Furthermore, each interruption generates an invisible emotional drain. It's that feeling of tiredness at the end of the day without knowing exactly why, as if you've run a marathon without moving from your chair. It's not the work that exhausts you, but the constant noise that steals small fractions of mental energy. Some people think distractions aren't that serious because they're just a matter of wasted seconds. But the problem isn't the quantity, but the frequency. Checking your phone 30 times a day seems like a small amount, but it amounts to hundreds of mental interruptions. If each one takes minutes to recover, we're talking about hours wasted. It's like trying to fill a bucket with water with holes in it. No matter how hard you try, the water keeps leaking out. The clearest example is found in the lives of students. Many believe they can study with music, their cell phone at their side, and several tabs open on their computer. But what really happens is that they end up reading the same page multiple times, memorizing little, and performing worse. That's why so many students feel they study for hours without results. It's not a lack of ability, it's just too much noise. Eliminating distractions doesn't mean living like a hermit, disconnected from the world. It means regaining control of your attention, deciding where and when to allocate your energy. The key is understanding that every time you say yes to a distraction, you're saying no to your own growth. That social media notification you check in the middle of your work doesn't just steal a minute. It steals the thread of your thoughts. That trivial conversation at the office doesn't just take 10 minutes. It takes away the opportunity to make progress on what really matters. This is where the art of learning to say no comes in. Saying no isn't rejection, it's protection. It's protecting your time, your mind, your energy. Sometimes that no is direct, not accepting an unnecessary meeting, not responding immediately to a message that can wait, not getting involved in an irrelevant discussion. Other times it's a silent no, turning off notifications, closing tabs, disconnecting from the internet during focused hours. Every no you say to noise is a yes to clarity and progress. An inspiring example is Steve Jobs, known for his ability to say no to hundreds of ideas in order to focus on just a few. Apple didn't become one of the world's most valuable companies by randomly launching thousands of products. It became a leader because it knew how to focus on a few projects and execute them with excellence. Jobs understood that every yes comes at a cost, and that dispersion kills innovation. In everyday life, applying this habit can be as simple as setting clear schedules for technology use. For example, deciding you'll only check email twice a day instead of every 10 minutes. Or that you'll have a 2-hour block of deep work every morning with no phone, no social media, no interruptions. At first, it may seem difficult, almost impossible. But when you experience the power of uninterrupted focus, you'll find you make more progress in 2 hours of total concentration than in a full day of multitasking. Practical strategies for disconnecting from digital noise abound, and not all of them require radical changes. One of the most effective is productive airplane mode, leaving your phone in another room while you work. Another is using apps that temporarily block social media or entertainment sites during your work hours. You can also implement the Pomodoro technique, working for 25 minutes focused and resting for 5, repeating the cycle several times. The important thing isn't the exact technique, but creating an environment where concentration is natural and distractions are minimal. Another powerful tip is to redesign your physical surroundings. If your desk is cluttered with objects, papers, and open screens, your mind will also be full of distractions. A clean and tidy space encourages mental clarity. Even small changes like having only the essentials on your desk or using headphones to block out external noise can make a huge difference. But perhaps the most important thing is to train your mind to resist temptation. Because distractions don't always come from outside, they often come from within. It's that impulse to check your phone for no reason, the desire to open another tab when the task becomes difficult, that inclination to put off what's important. Learning to observe those impulses without giving in is a form of self-control training. Like a muscle, the more you exercise it, the stronger it becomes. Buddhist monks practice mindfulness precisely to train this ability, to be present to one thing at a time. They don't need technology to distract them. The human mind produces enough noise on its own. If they can train their attention in quiet monasteries, we can do so amidst digital chaos, with discipline and clear habits. Ultimately, eliminating distractions and learning to say no isn't just a productivity technique, it's a life philosophy. It's deciding that your time and attention are too valuable to give away at the first stimuli that appears. It's recognizing that deep focus not only produces more results, it also generates more satisfaction. Because nothing compares to the feeling of having truly made progress, of having created something meaningful, of having spent your hours on something worthwhile. Imagine finishing your day and realizing you didn't get lost in notifications, didn't waste your energy on pointless discussions, didn't shatter your mind into 1,000 pieces. Imagine closing the day with the certainty that what you did brought you closer to your goals, and not that you simply survived the noise. That peace, that clarity, is the reward of this habit. And although it may seem difficult in a world saturated with stimuli, the truth is that more and more people are choosing this path. Professionals who decide to disconnect from social media for weeks, entrepreneurs who set aside entire days just to think, students who turn off their phones and discover they perform twice as well. All of them prove that it's not an impossible struggle, but a conscious decision. The question you need to ask yourself isn't whether you can eliminate distractions, but whether you're willing to pay the price to maintain them. Because the true cost of multitasking, interruptions, and digital noise isn't just wasted time, it's wasted life. And there's no resource more irretrievable than that. Chapter 3. Habit number 3. Manage your energy like it's gold. Imagine your life as a state-of-the-art smartphone. No matter how expensive, modern, or powerful it is, if the battery is empty, it becomes useless. Similarly, human beings have a limited reserve of energy each day, and how we manage it largely determines how far we can achieve our goals. Many people think of time as the primary resource, but the truth is that energy is even more decisive. Two people can have the same 24 hours, but those who manage their energy better will achieve much more than those who simply cling to the clock without taking care of their physical, mental, and emotional state. The metaphor of the daily battery reminds us that when we wake up each morning, we start with a charge that is rarely 100%. Some carry accumulated fatigue, others start the day full of motivation, but what makes the difference is the ability to recharge and not waste energy on processes that don't add up. Just as a phone loses battery more quickly when several heavy apps are running at the same time, our minds and bodies become exhausted when we try to multitask without a break or when we are exposed to constant stimuli. The key isn't doing more, but knowing when to stop, when to turn off internal and external notifications, and when to recharge to keep moving forward. Think of a high-performance athlete. They don't compete 24/7. They have intense training sessions, but also periods of deep rest, controlled nutrition, and recovery practices. An Olympic runner knows that without rest there is no victory, because the muscle needs to repair what the effort has worn down. The same thing happens in our daily lives. If we insist on staying active without breaks, believing that productivity is only a matter of hours worked, we actually get closer to exhaustion than to success. Learning to respect our energy cycles is an act of strategic intelligence, not weakness. There are times of the day when our natural energy is at its peak. For many, it's early in the morning. For others, it's after a nap or even at night, depending on their chronotype. Identifying these energy peaks and using them for the highest impact tasks is one of the most powerful decisions you can make. A writer, for example, should reserve their peak hours for creating, not checking emails. An entrepreneur should allocate their peak time to making strategic decisions, not answering trivial messages. Intelligent energy management begins with personal observation and respect for these internal rhythms. Recharging routines are essential. Getting a good night's sleep isn't a luxury. It's an investment. Science has shown that a lack of sleep reduces concentration, impairs memory, and diminishes effective decision-making. Thomas Edison could only afford to sleep 4 hours, but he also took long breaks throughout the day. Nikola Tesla, for his part, pushed his body to the limit and ended up suffering nervous breakdowns for not respecting the need for rest. It's not about imitating geniuses, but about learning from mistakes and taking care of our most valuable machine, the human body. Diet is another pillar of energy. Eating uncontrolled, excessive, or with ultra-processed foods generates energy spikes followed by abrupt drops, leading to premature fatigue. In contrast, a balanced diet with fruits, vegetables, quality proteins, and good hydration maintains a stable energy flow throughout the day. Just observe how a heavy, fried lunch dulls the mind, while a light but nutritious meal allows you to continue with mental clarity. You don't need to be a nutrition expert to realize that the body responds directly to what we give it as fuel. Mental energy is as fragile as physical energy. We waste vast amounts of it on unnecessary worries, on pointless arguments, or on repeating negative thoughts over and over again. The mind is like a browser window full of open tabs. Each one consumes resources. Therefore, closing cycles, making quick decisions, and avoiding perfectionism are mental hygiene routines that free up energy. The most effective leaders tend to have a minimalist lifestyle, not because they despise things, but because they know that every poorly managed object, commitment, or relationship is an invisible drain on energy. Physical exercise, although it may seem like an expense, is actually an energy generator. A daily 30-minute walk oxygenates the brain, improves circulation, and increases mental clarity. You don't need an expensive gym or athletic routines. Just incorporate regular movement. The human body is designed to move, and when we deprive it of that activity, energy stagnates, leading to fatigue and a lack of motivation. Interestingly, many of the most productive people on the planet have a simple but consistent physical routine that not only strengthens the body but also the mind. Meditation and conscious breathing are underappreciated but extremely powerful tools. Taking a few minutes to stop, close your eyes, and focus on your breathing can reset your nervous system and restore mental clarity. It's no coincidence that elite business people, athletes, and artists practice mindfulness techniques. They've understood that energy is regenerated not only through physical rest, but also through mental breaks. In a world where attention is fragmented, dedicating a few minutes of silence is like plugging in your charger in the middle of the day. A common mistake is confusing being busy with being productive. You can fill your schedule with activities and still feel exhausted without making progress on what's important. This happens because we often consume energy on microtasks, commitments imposed by others, or minor decisions that drain more than they contribute. Learning to prioritize, delegate, and say no is also a way to protect energy. Every yes to the trivial is a no to the essential. And energy, once expended, isn't recovered until the next cycle. If we look back at history, we see that humanity's greatest achievements were not achieved through endless days, but through the ability to maintain energy focused on a clear vision. Leonardo da Vinci, for example, had multiple interests, but he knew how to alternate periods of intense creation with long breaks for contemplation. Steve Jobs, on the other hand, was obsessive about limiting his distractions so that his energy was focused solely on what he considered transformative. Both understood that creativity and innovation require quality energy, not simply accumulated hours. Managing energy as if it were gold also involves recognizing when to stop. Often, the drive to achieve more leads us into the trap of excess, and excess ends up robbing us of years of life. True wisdom lies in working hard, but also in knowing how to let go. A battery that pushes itself to give more than it can eventually burns out. The same happens with our body and mind. Exponential growth is only possible if there is a balance between action and recovery. Ultimately, every day is an opportunity to use energy consciously. When you wake up, you can decide whether you'll spend your battery complaining, on minor tasks and distractions, or whether you'll use it to build projects, relationships, and habits that truly make a difference. It's not about living obsessed with every minute, but rather about living with the awareness that energy is a finite resource that, when managed wisely, becomes the engine of extraordinary growth. Chapter 4. Habit number 4. Prioritize what multiplies, not what subtracts. Imagine holding a magnifying glass and a beam of sunlight. If you move the magnifying glass constantly, the light scatters and barely warms the paper. But if you hold it steady on a single point, sooner or later, the paper will burn. This is how energy and time work in our lives. When scattered in 1,000 directions, they produce minimal results. When focused on what truly matters, they generate an unstoppable fire. This is the heart of the 80-20 principle. The understanding that the majority of results come from a minority of actions. In other words, 20% of what we do gives us 80% of the fruits, while the remaining 80% contributes barely 20% of the impact. The trap many fall into is confusing urgency with importance. They spend their days responding to messages, putting out fires, and attending to demands that seem impossible to postpone, but which, in retrospect, don't move the needle on anything significant. Therefore, those who achieve sustainable success aren't necessarily the busiest, but rather those who learn to differentiate the vital from the trivial. An entrepreneur can spend 12 hours a day in their office and still see their business stagnate because they devote their energy to small problems and avoid facing strategic decisions. On the other hand, another who only works 6 hours a day, but focuses their attention on partnerships, innovation, and expansion, will manage to multiply their results. A classic example of this principle is seen in sales. Most salespeople spend time with customers who have little intention of buying, answering endless questions or enduring pointless objections. But the best know how to identify high-value customers, those who are truly willing to invest and who represent the majority of revenue. Focusing on that 20% of strategic customers can generate more impact than serving the 80% who never go beyond a simple quote. The challenge lies in having the discipline to let go of what doesn't add value and resolutely focus on what does multiply. Another area where this is clearly evident is in personal relationships. We all have dozens or even hundreds of contacts, but only a small group directly influences our lives, our emotions, and our opportunities. Investing time in people who inspire us, push us, and challenge us to grow multiplies our progress. On the contrary, surrounding ourselves with those who drain our energy with empty criticism, drama, or envy only saps the strength of our projects. Someone who understands this will prioritize having lunch with a mentor who can open a new path, rather than spending hours with someone who only fuels the grievance. Identifying high-impact activities requires taking a sincere inventory of what occupies our time. Many people find that much of their schedule is dominated by what others expect of them, not by what they themselves want to achieve. A powerful exercise is to take a pen and paper and write down all the activities completed in a week. Then, underline which ones generated concrete results and which ones barely consumed any time. The pattern is usually clear. The actions that truly add value are few, repeatable, and strategic. These are the ones that must be multiplied, automated, and protected at all costs. The digital world offers a striking example. A content creator can spend hours editing the smallest details of a video, but perhaps their true impact lies in the quality of the message and the connection with their audience. Another may obsess over responding to every comment, when what will truly advance them is designing the next big idea that will reach millions. The 80-20 approach invites us to recognize that not all actions carry the same weight and that by focusing on the right levers, the results curve skyrockets. To apply this habit, it takes courage. Saying no to urgent but low-impact tasks creates discomfort. There will always be emails to answer, meetings to attend to, or small matters that demand immediate attention. But those who are trapped in that cycle never achieve greatness. Effective leaders learn to delegate intelligently, automate repetitive processes, and reserve their peak hours for strategic thinking. Bill Gates used to take entire weeks alone to reflect, read, and rethink the direction of Microsoft. He didn't do this because he was idle, but because he understood that his role as a leader wasn't to solve every operational problem, but to make the decisions that would multiply the company's future. The 80-20 principle applies not only to tasks but also to personal decisions. Physical well-being, for example, depends largely on a few fundamental habits: getting enough sleep, eating well, and exercising daily. You don't need to know every diet or try every exercise. Focusing on that key 20% yields the most benefits. The same goes for finances. Consistently saving and investing in safe assets often has a greater impact than pursuing dozens of complex get-rich-quick schemes. The key is to identify where the real driver of results lies and stick to it with discipline. An illustrative case is that of a student preparing for an important exam. They may spend days reading every detail of their notes, underlining pages and pages, but in the end, the key questions always revolve around the core concepts. If that student invests their time in mastering the fundamental topics, they will have a better chance of passing than someone who wastes time trying to memorize everything. In real life, results are not achieved by those who accumulate the most information, but by those who learn to focus on the essentials and master them thoroughly. The difficulty in prioritizing lies in the fear of letting go. Letting go of what remains creates the feeling of missing out on opportunities, but in reality, it's the path to making room for what truly multiplies. Henry Ford, when he created the assembly line, eliminated hundreds of unnecessary steps in car production. He focused on optimizing what generated the greatest impact: speed and efficiency. That change not only revolutionized his company, but transformed the entire industry. In the same way, each person can revolutionize their lives by simplifying and directing their energy toward what gives them the greatest returns. This habit isn't about working less, but about working better. It doesn't mean being lazy, but rather being strategic. When you manage to identify your 20% and commit to investing the majority of your energy in it, you enter a cycle of accelerated growth. The opposite is also true. If you dedicate most of your time to the 80% that barely generates results, you'll end up exhausted, frustrated, and with no great achievements to show for it. The difference between extraordinary success and mediocrity lies in this invisible, everyday choice. In the end, prioritizing what multiplies isn't a luxury reserved for a select few, but a decision accessible to anyone willing to honestly observe where they put their energy. It means stopping living on automatic, caught up in what seems urgent, and starting to live with vision, focused on what truly moves the needle. And the most powerful thing is that, by practicing this habit consistently, growth ceases to be linear and becomes exponential. Because when you focus your magnifying glass on the right spot, the fire of results is inevitable. Chapter 5. Habit number 5. Turn learning into your best investment. Warren Buffett once said that the best investment a person can make is in themselves, and he proved it with facts. He spends most of his day reading, studying, and reflecting. This idea, so simple and yet so powerful, contains a universal truth that separates those who grow from those who stagnate. Constant learning is not a luxury. It is not a secondary activity. It is the foundation upon which any high-performance life is built. The knowledge we acquire becomes a kind of compound interest that, over time, multiplies our opportunities, our clarity, and our ability to make the right decisions. The world's most influential leaders have always had one thing in common. They are eternal learners. Bill Gates dedicates hours of his schedule to reading entire books and underlining concepts. Elon Musk, before building rockets, devoured engineering and physics textbooks. Oprah Winfrey transformed her life by constantly nourishing herself with ideas and perspectives through reading. It's not about accumulating data like trophies, but rather understanding that each piece of knowledge can be the spark that ignites a bigger vision, a more solid project, or a more accurate decision. But learning isn't simply about exposing yourself to information. We live in an era where access to content is practically unlimited. Digital books, podcasts, online courses, videos, conferences. The question isn't whether there's enough material to study, but how to filter and assimilate what truly provides value. This is where the ability to discern comes into play. Not everything we read or hear carries the same weight. Someone who dedicates their time to studying fundamental principles of their field and delving into topics that bring them closer to their goals will have a huge advantage over someone who consumes information haphazardly, jumping from topic to topic without a common thread. Effective learning requires strategy. One strategy is spaced repetition, a proven method for anchoring knowledge in long-term memory. Instead of reading a book once and forgetting it, it's about reviewing concepts at scheduled intervals, reinforcing what you've learned just as your mind is about to forget it. This way, ideas become more lastingly ingrained. Another powerful strategy is teaching. When we explain what we're learning to someone else, we force ourselves to organize our thoughts and identify gaps in our understanding. That's why many great leaders teach, write, or share what they know. They do this not only to inspire, but also to consolidate their own learning. The human brain loves associations. We remember best what we connect with emotions, stories, or images. Therefore, an effective way to learn faster is to link information to personal experiences. If you read about leadership, think of specific situations in your life where you applied or could apply those principles. If you study a technical subject, look for practical examples that ground it in reality. Memory is fueled not only by facts, but by meaningful connections. Continuous learning isn't limited to books. It's also found in conversations with wise people, in making mistakes, and in observing our surroundings. Every failure contains a hidden lesson, but only those with the humility to reflect on what happened are able to extract it. Thomas Edison said, after thousands of failed attempts with the light bulb, that he hadn't failed, but rather discovered 1,000 ways that didn't work. This mindset turns life into a laboratory for growth, where each experience contributes to greater learning. Humility plays an essential role in this habit. Those who think they know everything close the door to growth. On the other hand, those who recognize how much they still have to learn keep an open and receptive mind. Socrates said, "I only know that I know nothing." That phrase encapsulates the spirit of the true learner. Someone who, instead of boasting about their knowledge, is dedicated to expanding it day by day. Learning must also adapt to current times. The world is changing at a dizzying speed, and what was useful yesterday may be obsolete today. Professionals who dominated their industry 20 years ago fell behind due to lack of updating. On the other hand, those who understood that education doesn't end with university, but is a never-ending journey, remain relevant and competitive. The ability to learn quickly has become the most valuable skill of the 21st century. A crucial aspect is managing our environment. If we surround ourselves with people who read, study, and challenge themselves, we will inevitably imitate that behavior. On the other hand, if we are surrounded by those who never seek to improve, our standards will decline. Learning communities, book clubs, discussion groups, and even networking circles are catalysts for growth because they push us to remain in constant intellectual movement. It's not just about consuming information, but about applying it. A book doesn't change your life just because it's on the shelf, but because of what you do with its teachings. Many read compulsively but never implement what you've learned, turning knowledge into a hobby rather than an investment. True transformation happens when each new idea becomes an action, a habit, a tangible result. That's why, every time we finish a book, a course, or a lecture, we should ask ourselves, what am I going to do with this tomorrow? The pace of learning can also be improved by cultivating curiosity. Curious people don't settle for the superficial. They ask questions, look for connections, and explore beyond the obvious. This constant curiosity keeps the mind sharp and prevents passivity. Steve Jobs, for example, became interested in calligraphy in his youth, a seemingly irrelevant subject. Decades later, that interest was reflected in the typographic design of the first Apple computers, setting them apart from the competition. A seemingly small learning curve became a monumental advantage. Technology, when used well, is an extraordinary ally. Speed reading apps, audiobook platforms, executive summaries, and online courses allow you to learn anytime, anywhere. But the key lies in the intention, using technology as a bridge to knowledge acquisition, not a bottomless pit of distraction. The same tool can be a gateway to growth or a waste of time, depending on how it's used. Ultimately, learning is investing in freedom. Every new concept, every skill acquired, every perspective assimilated expands a person's range of possibilities. Someone who is fluent in multiple languages can access more cultures and opportunities. Someone who understands finance has more control over their future. Those who study leadership can better guide others and build larger projects. Learning expands horizons and allows life to be limited not by what we already know, but by what we are willing to discover. Turning learning into a daily investment means committing to the idea that we never stop growing. That every day should contain a space to nourish the mind, even if it's just for a few minutes. That every experience, good or bad, can be transformed into wisdom if reflected upon. And that, in the end, the difference between an ordinary life and an extraordinary one lies not in luck, but in how much we have invested in ourselves through knowledge. Chapter 6. Habit number 6. Surround yourself with people who drive you, not consume you. Jim Rohn said, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." This seemingly simple phrase holds one of the most powerful truths about success and personal growth. Our environment is like a mirror that reflects and shapes our identity. Without realizing it, we absorb the attitudes, habits, language, and even the dreams, or lack thereof, of those around us. If you spend time with people who complain all day, you'll end up viewing life with the same bitterness. If, on the other hand, you surround yourself with people who strive to grow, who work hard, and who exude enthusiasm, that spirit will inevitably permeate you. Our social circle acts like an invisible thermostat that regulates our aspirations. Imagine someone with great ideas who, every time they share them, receives criticism, ridicule, or indifference from those around them. Little by little, that person begins to doubt themselves, minimize their dreams, and believe that perhaps they aren't possible. However, when those same ideas are shared with a group that listens, encourages, and provides solutions, they gain strength, transform into concrete plans, and eventually materialize. Our environment can be an invisible prison or a catapult that propels us forward. A clear example is that of elite athletes. When a runner trains alone, they may push themselves, but rarely reach their maximum level. However, when they train with other high-performance competitors, they are pushed to surpass their own limits. They don't want to fall behind, and that positive pressure makes them achieve times they never imagined. Similarly, in their professional and personal lives, being surrounded by inspiring minds acts as an energy field that raises their standards. Science backs this up. Various studies in social psychology have shown that behaviors are contagious. If the majority of a group of friends smoke, a new member is more likely to adopt the habit. If a work team's culture is one of excellence, punctuality, and commitment, whoever joins will end up aligning with those values. This doesn't happen by chance, but because human beings have a strong instinct for belonging. We imitate those around us to feel accepted. Therefore, carefully choosing the people in our lives is as important as choosing the foods we put in our bodies. But it's not just about distancing yourself from those who drain your energy. It's also about learning how to actively build a circle that adds value. To do this, you need to be intentional. It's not enough to wait for the right people to appear. You have to seek them out, approach them, offer value, and cultivate genuine relationships. A young entrepreneur can decide to attend events, workshops, or communities where growth-minded people gather. At first, they may feel out of place, but over time, those connections will nourish them and inspire them to move forward faster than they could alone. A historical example is the so-called Vienna Circle, a group of philosophers and scientists who met in the 1920s to discuss revolutionary ideas. None of them would have achieved so much in isolation, but together they leveraged their talents and laid the foundations for modern philosophy and science. Similarly, the tech giants of Silicon Valley didn't flourish by accident. They fed off each other in an ecosystem that rewarded innovation and risk. These examples show us that context matters as much as individual talent. Yet many people maintain social circles that hold them back for fear of being alone. They prefer to endure the company of those who criticize, complain, or live in mediocrity, rather than take the uncomfortable step of distancing themselves and seeking new connections. This fear is understandable, but ultimately, staying in energy-sapping environments is like trying to run with weights tied to your feet. You can move forward, but at enormous cost and with minimal speed. Sometimes, true courage lies in letting go in order to fly higher. Creating a support network for exponential growth doesn't mean surrounding yourself only with successful people in the traditional sense. It means surrounding yourself with those who have a positive mindset, a hunger to learn, and a willingness to support one another. It can be a friend who always motivates you, a colleague who shares knowledge, a mentor who opens your eyes to new possibilities. It can even be someone younger than you, whose freshness and innovation remind you of the importance of keeping an open mind. Growth is multiplied when each member of the circle contributes and receives at the same time. Balance is also key. We can't expect to receive support and inspiration without giving anything in return. Those who enter a circle with a selfish mindset, seeking to take advantage of others, quickly lose credibility. The true strength of a network lies in reciprocity. Everyone contributes, everyone benefits. An entrepreneur who shares their learning, even their mistakes, helps others avoid unnecessary setbacks. In turn, they receive feedback, new ideas, and opportunities they wouldn't have found alone. The influence of your social circle extends even to small habits. If your friends wake up early to run, chances are you'll end up joining in. If your team makes it a habit to read a book a month and discuss it, you'll soon find yourself reading more than usual. Every positive habit is reinforced when it becomes a shared norm. The same goes for negative ones. If everyone procrastinates, you will too. If everyone criticizes, you'll join the chorus. In the end, it's almost impossible to remain immune to group culture. We mustn't forget that today, thanks to technology, we have access to global communities. You can learn from a mentor who lives on another continent, participate in online study groups, or closely follow people who share valuable knowledge online. Even if you don't see them in person, their influence can be as powerful as that of a physical circle. The key is to intentionally choose who you allow into your mind each day. If your digital consumption is filled with complaints, drama, and superficiality, that will be your mental diet. If instead, you choose to follow those who inspire and educate you, your mind will be nourished with powerful ideas. Ultimately, surrounding yourself with people who inspire you is one of the most strategic decisions you can make. Not only because it keeps you motivated, but because it sets a higher standard. When everyone around you is advancing, you can't stand still. When everyone grows, you grow too. This habit doesn't require luck or special connections. It requires courage, intention, and discipline to carefully choose who is part of your inner circle. At the end of the day, each person is a reflection of their environment. If you want to know where someone is headed, just look at who they interact with. A person's future is largely determined by the conversations they have daily, the examples they follow, and the energy they receive from those around them. Building a positive circle isn't an option. It's a necessity for anyone who aspires to multiply their growth. Chapter 7. Habit number 7. Transform your health into an ally of success. Success isn't built solely on mental discipline, strategic planning, or professional skills. In reality, the foundation that supports all of these areas is health. A person with a brilliant mind but a tired body can't perform at their peak. The most common mistake of those pursuing accelerated growth is sacrificing their physical well-being in the name of productivity. They convince themselves that sleeping less, skipping meals, or spending hours sitting still will bring them closer to their goals faster. The reality is that this strategy is unsustainable. A tired body takes its toll in the form of lack of concentration, low creativity, recurring illnesses, and, in the worst cases, chronic burnout. Health, far from being a luxury, is the essential fuel that allows for sustained productivity over time. Sleep, for example, is one of the most underrated pillars of human performance. We live in a culture that glorifies a lack of rest as a symbol of hard work. We hear phrases like, "sleep is for the weak," or "I'll sleep when I'm dead," but science shows us otherwise. Sleep isn't a waste of time. It's a strategic investment. During rest hours, the brain processes information, consolidates memories, eliminates toxins, and restores vital functions. Denying yourself enough sleep is like trying to run a marathon with your shoes untied. Sooner or later you'll stumble. Studies show that a single night of insufficient sleep impairs your ability to concentrate and make decisions on par with someone with a moderate blood alcohol level. Imagine, then, the cumulative effect of weeks or months without good sleep. Productivity doesn't multiply. It collapses. Furthermore, sleep regulates hormones that are key to emotional balance. When we sleep poorly, levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, increase, making us more irritable and less able to handle pressure. At the same time, the production of serotonin and dopamine, neurotransmitters linked to well-being and motivation, decreases. It's no coincidence that after a bad night, we feel discouraged and lacking the energy to move forward. Getting 7 to 8 hours of quality sleep isn't a whim. It's a biological necessity that boosts mental and physical performance. Nutrition is another of the invisible pillars of success. Everything you eat becomes the raw material for your energy, your thoughts, and even your emotions. A diet loaded with refined sugars and ultra-processed foods may give you a momentary energy boost, but it inevitably drags you down into a slump of tiredness, distraction, and bad mood. On the contrary, a balanced diet rich in protein, complex carbohydrates, healthy fats, vitamins, and minerals acts as a stable supply of fuel. It's like comparing a campfire made of quickly burning paper to one fueled by logs that burn for hours. Many entrepreneurs and professionals underestimate how nutrition directly impacts their daily productivity. Skipping breakfast or replacing it with coffee and cookies may seem harmless, but it's a recipe for mid-morning burnout. Instead, starting the day with foods rich in fiber, protein, and healthy fats, such as oatmeal, eggs, or nuts, offers sustained energy that maintains focus for hours. Similarly, incorporating fruits and vegetables of varied colors guarantees antioxidants that protect the brain from wear and tear. Eating well isn't a matter of aesthetics, but of strategy. Physical exercise completes the triad of high performance. It's not just about keeping your body in shape, but also about activating a natural mechanism that increases energy and mental clarity. Exercise releases endorphins, chemicals that elevate your mood and reduce stress. It also improves blood circulation, which means your brain receives more oxygen and nutrients, increasing your ability to concentrate and be more creative. Those who think they don't have time to exercise often spend more time tired, distracted, or sick, which ultimately steals more hours than they think they have. Daily movement doesn't have to be complicated. You don't need to spend 3 hours in a gym to reap the benefits. Simply incorporate micro-habits. Walk for 20 minutes, stretch after working at the computer, take the stairs instead of the elevator, or do bodyweight strength exercises. These small gestures add up, and when repeated daily, they transform your energy level and mental resilience. The human body was designed to move. When we keep it sedentary for years, the price is paid in the form of stiffness, fatigue, and loss of vitality. Beyond these three pillars, sleep, nutrition, and exercise, there is a dimension of health that many ignore: emotional management. Stress, anxiety, and a lack of control over our emotions not only affect our minds but also wear down our bodies. Chronically elevated cortisol weakens the immune system, promotes weight gain, and reduces our ability to concentrate. Therefore, cultivating micro-habits for emotional well-being is just as important as taking care of our diet. Meditation, conscious breathing, or simply taking breaks throughout the day to disconnect from the noise help recharge our internal batteries. Micro-habits are the secret to transforming your health without making drastic changes. Drinking a glass of water when you wake up, stretching for 5 minutes midday, taking a short walk after lunch, spending 10 minutes journaling before bed. Each action seems small, but together they create a powerful routine that sustains high energy levels. It's not about striving for perfection, but about building consistency. Health isn't achieved with an occasional marathon of good habits, but with the daily practice of small actions that add up. An interesting aspect is that healthcare becomes a virtuous cycle. When you sleep well, you make better food choices because your body doesn't crave excess sugar to compensate for fatigue. When you eat nutritious foods, you have more energy to exercise. When you exercise, your sleep is deeper and more restful. Each area enhances the other, and together they create an unstoppable energy system. The opposite is also true. Poor sleep, poor nutrition, and lack of exercise lead to a vicious cycle of exhaustion that is difficult to escape. We can't talk about sustainable success without talking about prevention. Many people only value their health when it's gone. They postpone medical checkups, ignore signs of fatigue, and believe their body can endure indefinitely. The reality is that every hour invested in taking care of your health today is an hour saved from problems tomorrow. True productivity isn't measured by how many hours you work, but by the quality of those hours. And that quality directly depends on how strong, rested, and balanced your body is. Turning health into an ally of success doesn't mean becoming a professional athlete or obsessing over extreme diets. It means recognizing that your body is the vehicle that will take you to your goals and that keeping it in good condition is an act of intelligence, not vanity. Every time you choose to sleep at a reasonable hour, prepare a nutritious meal, or move a little more, you are investing in your future. It's not a sacrifice, it's a strategy. Ultimately, the question isn't whether you have time to take care of your health, but whether you can afford not to. A sick, exhausted, or weakened body ends up stealing far more time than you saved by neglecting it. Those who understand this make their well-being a priority and discover that, far from detracting from it, it multiplies their performance in all other areas of life. Health isn't an accessory to success. It's the foundation upon which everything else is built. Chapter 8. Habit number 8. Focus on the long term, not instant gratification. We live in an age where immediate gratification has become the standard. Everything is designed to deliver results now, instantly. One click and your food is delivered to your door, one notification and you receive a dopamine hit, one online purchase and the next day the product is in your hands. This dynamic trains the brain to constantly seek quick, effortless, and immediate rewards. But what seems like convenience becomes a trap that prevents us from building what truly matters. Immediate gratification isn't bad in and of itself, but when it becomes the compass that guides our decisions, it distances us from true growth. Sustainable success isn't measured by how many times we experience momentary pleasure, but by the ability to postpone those rewards to achieve multiplied results in the future. The trap of immediate rewards is that they make us feel productive or fulfilled when in reality we're just satisfying short-term impulses. It's like sowing seeds every day, only to pull them up the next day to see if they've grown. Impatience destroys any chance of a harvest. Think of someone who wants to transform their body. They join a gym and after a week expect to see results in the mirror. When they don't see any changes, they get frustrated and quit. The same thing happens with learning, business, relationships, and any area of growth. Time and consistency are irreplaceable ingredients. You can't harvest greatness with an immediate, click mentality. A classic example of the short-term trap is in personal finance. Many people prefer to spend their money on momentary luxuries rather than investing it in assets that generate long-term income. Buying a new cell phone every year gives instant gratification, but investing that money in education, a business, or the stock market can multiply many times over in the future. Warren Buffett summed it up with a powerful phrase: "The stock market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient." This idea applies not only to investments but to life as a whole. Patience combined with consistent action creates results that seem unattainable to those who only seek immediate gratification. Science also confirms this phenomenon. The famous marshmallow experiment, conducted in the 1970s by Walter Mischel at Stanford University, showed how children who were able to wait longer for a second treat performed better in their adult lives in terms of academics, finances, and well-being. The ability to delay rewards isn't just a character trait. It's a skill that determines one's long-term success. Every time you choose to postpone instant pleasure to work on something bigger, you're training that patience muscle that brings you closer to exponential growth. The exponential growth mindset is the opposite of living for immediate gratification. It means understanding that great achievements are built with a clear vision of the future and consistent actions that seem small in the present. Results don't come in a linear fashion, but rather as an exponential curve. For months or years, progress may seem invisible, but suddenly, the accumulation of effort and discipline generates a huge leap. It's the same principle of compound interest. At first, growth seems slow, but after a while, the curve shoots up. The problem is that most people give up just before reaching that acceleration. Imagine the case of a writer who decides to write 1 page a day. At the end of a month, they have 30 pages, which seems like very little. After a year, they have a completed book. And if they maintain this discipline for 10 years, they can have an entire library of their own work. The daily action is minimal. The reward is monumental. The same is true of reading. Reading 10 pages a day seems insignificant, but in a year, it amounts to 12 books, and in a decade, more than 120. People who think long-term understand that every action counts, even when they don't see immediate results. Focusing on exponential growth also means resisting distractions that promise momentary gratification. Spending hours on social media may give the illusion of entertainment and connection, but it rarely leaves anything to add to the future. Instead, dedicating that same time to practicing a language, strengthening a skill, or developing a personal project plants seeds that will bear fruit later. The key is to ask yourself with every decision, does this give me pleasure now or does it get me closer to what I want in the future? This simple question can be a powerful filter for prioritizing what truly matters. Another fundamental aspect is learning to visualize long-term benefits clearly enough to compete with the lure of immediate rewards. The human brain is designed to value what can be obtained now more than what will arrive years from now. That's why it's necessary to create mechanisms that make that future tangible. Making written plans, setting measurable goals, imagining in detail the life you want to build. All of this turns the long term into something concrete. The more real you feel about it, the stronger you'll be to resist the temptation of the instantaneous. A good example of an exponential growth mindset is that of elite athletes. None of them train because they expect to see results the next day. They train because they know that every repetition, every sacrifice, and every day of discipline accumulates over time to give them the chance to shine in a competition that may take place years from now. Their vision isn't immediate, it's strategic. And the same applies to any area. Studying a degree, starting a business, cultivating a deep relationship. Everything worthwhile requires time, patience, and consistency. The big mistake is confusing speed with progress. You may be moving quickly in the wrong direction, chasing quick gratification that takes you away from your true purpose. On the other hand, exponential growth may feel slow at first, but when the moment of leap comes, you discover that all that patience was an investment, not a waste. The key is to trust the process and stay focused, even when the results aren't yet visible. Ultimately, focusing on the long term is an act of faith in yourself. It means believing that your efforts today will make sense tomorrow, even if no one sees them and even if the fruits take time to appear. It means rejecting the comfort of the immediate to embrace the greatness of the lasting. Every time you choose to read instead of losing yourself online, to save instead of spending recklessly, to exercise instead of staying on the couch, you are saying, I believe in my future more than I believe in this fleeting moment. And that conviction, repeated day after day, is what builds extraordinary lives. True success doesn't belong to those who chase instant rewards, but to those who understand the logic of exponential growth. It's not about how much you earn today, but how much you can build with discipline and patience in the years to come. It's not about what you enjoy instantly, but what you'll be able to sustain throughout your life. Immediate gratification is like fireworks. It burns brightly for a few seconds and then goes out. Focusing on the long term is like the sun. It takes a while to rise, but when it does, it illuminates everything around it and keeps it alive. The choice is in your hands. Chapter 9. Habit number 9. Create systems, not dependencies. Working hard has long been the most repeated piece of advice for achieving success. However, history is littered with people who worked hard their entire lives and never achieved great results. Effort alone guarantees nothing if it's not well directed. There's a crucial difference between working hard and working smart. Working hard means putting in long hours, expending energy, and feeling like you're constantly on the move. Working smart, on the other hand, means designing systems that multiply your effort, that work even when you're not present, and that don't rely solely on your daily energy. This is the mindset that separates those who build exponential growth from those who remain stuck in an endless cycle of exhaustion. A system is a set of processes, routines, or tools that produce results predictably without having to reinvent the wheel every time. When you work without systems, you rely on your memory, your motivation, and your willpower. That's fragile and exhausting. On the other hand, when you have systems, things work almost automatically. Imagine a restaurant that doesn't have standardized recipes or service protocols. Every day, the chef improvises the quantities, the waiter invents how to serve, and the cashier decides the price on the spot. The chaos would be total. But when there are recipes, defined steps, and a clear billing system, the business can scale and grow without depending on a single person. The same thing happens in personal and professional life. Without systems, you depend on yourself all the time. With systems, you create order that multiplies results. Working hard can give you a false sense of progress. Many people fill their days with endless tasks, meetings, and activities that make them feel busy, but they don't make progress toward what really matters. Working smart involves filtering, prioritizing, and designing ways to simplify. A clear example is automatic savings. If you rely on your discipline to set aside money each month, chances are you'll forget or spend it sooner. But if you set up a system for automatic transfers to an investment account, the savings happen without your conscious intervention. It's the same principle we should apply to multiple areas of life, designing processes that do the work for us. Automation is one of the most powerful keys to this habit. Today, there are digital tools that allow you to schedule payments, emails, social media posts, and reminders. This not only saves time but also frees up mental space. Every decision you don't have to make manually reduces cognitive load and allows you to focus on high-impact tasks. For example, an entrepreneur can spend hours responding to repetitive customer messages, or they can implement an auto-response system and an FAQ section. This decision gives them valuable time back to focus on improving their product or creating new opportunities. Delegating is another essential component for freeing up time. Many people believe that delegating means losing control, but it's actually gaining freedom. Trying to do everything yourself is a recipe for burnout. Delegating involves recognizing that there are others who can perform certain tasks better, faster, or more economically than you. Entrepreneur Richard Branson explained it clearly. Find people better than you to do what you don't enjoy, and focus on what you're really good at. Delegating isn't a sign of weakness, but of intelligence. It's recognizing that your time is limited and should be invested in activities that multiply your growth, not in those that keep you busy without generating results. A common misconception is that only top entrepreneurs need systems and delegation. In reality, anyone can implement them. For example, a student can create a study system with fixed schedules, organized summaries, and apps that block distractions during focused hours. A mother can establish daily routines to organize household chores so she doesn't have to improvise each day. A professional can design templates for her weekly reports, rather than starting from scratch each time. These systems, although simple, reduce stress and free up time and energy for what's important. Working smart also means focusing on scalable activities, those that generate results beyond individual effort. A teacher, for example, may teach a class to 30 students and need to repeat it several times in different groups. But if they record that class on video and convert it into an online course, they can impact thousands of people at the same time. Digital content is a system in itself. It works in the background, reaches more people, and continues generating value even when the creator is on vacation. This is a perfect example of how working smart multiplies results without multiplying hours. Systems also help reduce errors. When you rely solely on memory or improvisation, you're more likely to forget important details. Instead, a checklist or template reduces the chances of making mistakes. This not only saves time, but also prevents frustration and wasted energy. Airline pilots, for example, use checklists for every flight, even though they have decades of experience. This isn't a lack of confidence in their abilities. It's a respect for the importance of systems that ensure safety and precision. Creating systems doesn't mean losing flexibility, but rather having a solid foundation upon which to innovate. Many people believe that overstructuring things makes them rigid, but in reality, the opposite is true. When you have clear processes for routine tasks, you free up mental space for creativity and innovation. It's not about becoming a robot, but rather about unleashing your ability to think strategically, creatively, and about what truly multiplies your impact. The transition from working hard to working smart requires a shift in mindset. It requires moving from the belief that productivity is measured in hours worked to understanding that it's measured in results obtained. Someone can work 12 hours without a break and produce less than another who, with clear systems, achieves more in 6 hours. The key is to design mechanisms that work for you, rather than exhausting yourself working for everything. Ultimately, the question isn't how much you work, but how well your work is designed. Systems are the difference between a business that relies entirely on the founder and one that can grow without them. Between a burned-out person and one who manages to move forward with clarity. Between linear effort and exponential growth. Every time you choose to automate a task, delegate a responsibility, or create a repeatable process, you're buying time, energy, and focus for what truly matters. The real secret of those who manage to multiply their results isn't in working longer hours, but in designing systems that free them from the endless cycle of doing for the sake of doing. A well-built system is a silent ally that works 24 hours a day, without asking for a break, without making mistakes, and without depending on your motivation. That's the difference between a life of constant effort and a life of exponential growth. Chapter 10. Habit number 10. Constantly reflect and adjust. Constantly reflecting and adjusting is a habit that seems simple, but it has a profound impact on long-term results. Many people move forward in life without ever stopping to look back, without evaluating what's working and what isn't. They live on autopilot, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. The truth is that no matter how disciplined you are, how many systems you have, or how motivated you feel, if you don't reflect and correct your course, sooner or later you'll end up straying from your goals. Life isn't a straight line. It's full of detours, obstacles, and unforeseen changes. That's why continuous reflection and smart adjustments are the rudder that keeps your ship headed in the right direction. Weekly self-assessment is one of the most powerful tools you can incorporate into your life. It's not complicated or demanding endless hours. Simply set aside a moment of silence each week to review what you've done, acknowledge your progress, identify your mistakes, and clearly plan your next step. This habit turns experience into learning and prevents you from repeating the same patterns that keep you from success. Imagine an archer who shoots arrows without ever observing whether or not they hit the target. They'd never improve their aim. The same thing happens in life. If you don't observe the results of your actions, you won't have the information you need to improve. Reflection doesn't mean destructively criticizing yourself or beating yourself up for mistakes. On the contrary, it means adopting the attitude of an objective observer. Ask yourself, what did I do well this week? What didn't go as expected? What could I improve next time? These simple questions open up a space of clarity that becomes fuel for progress. Often, people underestimate small mistakes because they seem insignificant, but when repeated weekly, they end up accumulating a huge impact. Reflection prevents this silent wear and tear because it allows you to detect problems before they become crises. The key is not only to reflect, but also to adjust. Reflection without action is limited to analysis. Adjustment without reflection is blind action. You need both, evaluation and decision-making. Think of a ship sailing on the open sea. The captain constantly checks the compass, adjusts the rudder, and corrects the course according to the wind and currents. If he only reflected on where he was, but never moved the rudder, he would get lost. If he only moved the rudder without observing the compass, he would end up anywhere. The balance between observing and acting is what keeps the ship heading toward the desired destination. One of the most powerful benefits of weekly self-reflection is that it keeps you mindful. Most people lose their way not because they make big, wrong decisions, but because they let small detours accumulate until they stray too far from their original goal. For example, someone who wants to improve their health might skip one workout, then another, then an entire week, and before they know it, they've lost months. Weekly reflection acts like an early alarm that reminds you of your commitments and gets you back on track before the detour becomes too large. There are multiple ways to implement this habit. Some people keep a reflective journal, others use structured questions, and still others simply sit in silence to think. The important thing isn't the method, but the consistency. It's recommended to choose a fixed day of the week, such as Sunday afternoon or Monday morning, and dedicate at least 20 or 30 minutes to this practice. Over time, this ritual becomes a sacred space for connecting with yourself, where you can acknowledge your achievements, learn from your failures, and design a more solid plan. Correcting your course doesn't always mean making radical changes. Often, small adjustments are enough to get you back on track. An airplane pilot doesn't need to swerve sharply every minute. They only make slight adjustments that, accumulated over time, lead them to their destination. Similarly, adjusting your life week by week with small changes ensures you're moving in the right direction without having to reinvent everything. Maybe it's sleeping an extra half hour to improve your energy, cutting down on social media time, or committing to an important meeting you've been avoiding. These are simple actions, but repeated consistently, they have a huge impact. Constant reflection also helps you spot patterns. Maybe you notice that every time you skip your morning routine, the rest of your day feels disorganized. Or that every time you work too late, your productivity drops the next day. By recognizing these patterns, you can make smarter decisions to avoid them. Instead of struggling with the same mistakes over and over again, you learn from them and build a more efficient path toward your goals. Furthermore, reflecting and adjusting strengthens your resilience. In life, there will always be unforeseen events, failures, and obstacles. Without a habit of self-assessment, these problems can bring you down. But if you get into the habit of calmly analyzing them and seeking solutions, each setback becomes an opportunity for growth. Instead of seeing failure as the end of the road, you see it as a lesson that helps you redesign your strategy. This is how successful people turn difficulties into stepping stones towards something greater. The habit of reflecting and adjusting also nourishes your motivation. We often think motivation comes from outside sources, from inspirational quotes or from listening to someone who pushes us. But the most lasting motivation comes from the evidence of your own progress. When you sit down to review your week and see how far you've come, even in small steps, it reinforces your confidence and commitment. You realize you're not stuck, but rather moving forward. That sense of progress is an internal driving force much more powerful than any external stimulus. Another advantage of this habit is that it fosters mental clarity. We live in an age of constant distractions, notifications, news, commitments, and demands vying for our attention. Without time for reflection, it's easy to get lost in that noise and forget what's truly important. The weekly self-assessment acts as a filter that separates the essential from the superficial. It helps you remember your priorities and reorganize your time according to what truly brings you closer to your goals. The most fascinating thing is that this habit, although seemingly small, multiplies the effects of all the others. If you apply the previous 9 habits, from managing your energy to creating systems, but don't reflect, you risk losing effectiveness over time. On the other hand, if you constantly reflect and adjust, each habit fine-tunes, adapts, and strengthens. Reflection is the glue that holds everything together and ensures your growth is sustainable. Ultimately, constantly reflecting and adjusting is a reminder that we are not machines programmed to follow a fixed path. We are human beings constantly learning and evolving. Success is not a static destination, but a dynamic process of continuous improvement. Greatness does not arise from doing everything perfectly from the start, but from having the humility and wisdom to observe, learn, and course-correct again and again. If you adopt this habit, you'll discover that mistakes stop being failures and become guides. That detours stop being wasted time and become opportunities to refocus. And that each week, step by step, you get closer to the life you want to build. Constantly reflecting and adjusting is, In essence, living with awareness, purpose, and a clear compass that keeps you firmly on track toward your dreams. Important conclusion. As we reach the end of this journey, there is something essential that we cannot overlook. Every minute you let slip away is a fragment of life that will never return. Time cannot be stored, bought, or recovered. Those who honor it build it. Those who neglect it lose it without realizing it. And although we all share the same 24 hours, the difference lies in how we choose to use them. That choice, repeated day after day, is what defines the distance between an ordinary life and an extraordinary life. Multiplying your life by 10 is not a grandiloquent metaphor. It's an achievable reality for those who commit to acting consciously. It's not about working 10 times harder, nor about exhausting yourself, but about learning to focus, simplify, and empower each action. Power lies not in quantity, but in quality and the right direction. Sow in the fertile soil of your time, and the harvest will be abundant. The secret of those who transform their lives is that they don't wait for ideal conditions. They don't wait for everything to fall into place. They don't put off until tomorrow what can begin today. Tomorrow is a mirage that seduces those who doubt, but greatness belongs to those who make decisions in the present. The first step will never be perfect, but it's the only one capable of setting everything else in motion. Take a moment to think about what it would mean to you to multiply your life tenfold. Imagine having more clarity to decide, more energy to execute, more freedom to enjoy, more serenity to face challenges. Imagine feeling, every night when you close your eyes, that your day was well spent, that your hours were invested in what truly matters. That feeling of fulfillment doesn't come by chance. It's built on small, consistent decisions that, when combined, form an indestructible chain. True inspiration isn't in what you've heard here, but in what you decide to do with it. You don't need to wait for a Monday, a new year, or a better time. All you need is to make the decision to start today. Decide to wake up with intention, set clear boundaries, choose what drives you and let go of what drains you. Decide to prioritize your energy, your health, your learning, your environment, and your systems. Decide to look honestly in the mirror every week and adjust where necessary. That sum of choices is the path to a multiplied life. Look at your calendar, observe your hours, and ask yourself, am I investing in what brings me closer to the life I want, or am I continuing to waste my time on what keeps me from it? If the answer doesn't satisfy you, don't see it as a failure. See it as a wake-up call. You're one step away from transforming your story, and the key is in your pocket. No one else can turn it for you. The world doesn't need more busy people. It needs more focused people. It doesn't need more aimless races. It needs more paths traveled with intention. And you can be part of that minority who chooses to live with purpose. Not because you're smarter or have more resources, but because you decide to stop wasting time. Today is your starting point. Take the first step, even if it seems small, because that step will make the difference between staying where you are or getting closer to where you dream of being. Don't underestimate the power of a decision made with conviction. A multiplied life doesn't begin with a giant leap, but with the simple act of saying, I'm starting now. Time will continue to flow, with or without your permission. The question is whether you'll let it slip away meaninglessly or use it to build something so solid that it resonates beyond yourself. Don't let your story be that of someone who had dreams but never dared to pursue them. Let it be that of someone who chose to act, adjust, and persist until their life has multiplied tenfold. This is your calling. Don't ignore it. Don't put it off. Make it yours. Start today, not tomorrow. So, if this audiobook inspired you and you're ready to continue delving deeper into your personal growth and inner transformation, I invite you to discover another eye-opening audiobook that will change the way you see the world, your decisions, and your potential. Click here, and I'll see you there.